It's going to be so rewarding, untold, personal, emotional, psychological, and perhaps even financial riches. That's how it is. Hello, and welcome to the show. Welcome to the Creative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today. In this show, we explore how to live your exciting, creative, and most fulfilling life. Hello, and welcome to the Creative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I'm so glad you're here. I want to talk today about something that I've been giving a lot of thought to recently. It's about starting, and I'll be the first to admit that recently, because I've just moved to New York in the last couple of months, I've been spending a lot more of my time consuming than creating. And here's what I mean. I live in New York City now, and there is something to learn, to see, to do, to soak in and soak up every second of every day. So that's meant that some of my own creative pursuits, the things that I want to do, have sort of taken a back burner while I go to shows, explore Central Park, eat at amazing restaurants, everything, right? I've been telling my husband that New York City is like my boyfriend. I'm going out with the city as often as I possibly can. And yet, I'm fundamentally a creative, which means I have a need to create. It's not just something that I'm, doing. I actually actively want to bring new things into the world. And Marie Forleo describes people like me as multi-passionate. And I get that you have more streams than just the one. I've called it a generalist before, and I think that gets a bad rap, but I don't think it's a bad thing to be a generalist. It means that there are a number of things that spark your passion, your curiosity, and also when you're ready to build skills, you want to pursue more than one. Does that mean that you forego being great at any one thing? To be honest, it might, because there's only so many hours in a day. However, I think that if your interests take you in a number of different directions, that you should follow those interests and see where they lead you. One might stand out the best, the brightest, and that's cool. You can go, okay, from now on, this is what I do. This is how I add my thoughts, words, message, creations to the world. That's great. Or you might go serially. And here's what I mean. You might do like I used to. I was a photographer for a while, and I'm looking at one of my pictures of a sunset right now on my wall, and I love it. I don't take pictures professionally anymore because it's not ultimately what I chose. So I have the history of it, but I don't have the driving passion to show those captured moments. Don't get me wrong. I think photography is incredible. It's a moment captured in time for all eternity, which is amazing. But it doesn't hold my passion and attention as much as, say, music. And even music, which I have been a professional musician at times, it also does not hold my passion and attention. Does this sound familiar? Have you been a serial creative also? Or are you a person who's like, no, I do the one thing? Well, the one thing I do now is I write. And I've written 5 books, and 3 have been nonfiction, 2 have been fiction, but they have been the way that I have most enjoyed over the last 15 years connecting with and getting my message out there to people. So that's something that is important to think about when you are deciding about what it is you're going to frickin' do. Let's just call it what it is, right? You have to decide what you're going to do. Eventually, the whole I pay my bills, I work my job, I take care of my kids, I have a relationship. Granted, it takes up a lot of time and energy, but I think we're all creatives. I think that idea of only some of us breathe that rarefied air is baloney. I think we're all creative in one way or another. And I think eventually we all get to the point where we get the routine down, and then we have to decide how we're going to add to the beauty and to the art and to the creativity of the world. And some of us, will forego the relationship and the kids and even the steady job to create because we burn to do that. But some of us go, okay, I've settled my life to the routine that it is, and now I want to eke out more time to get my stuff done and also to create. And then we get into this place of getting your stuff done so that you can get to that place of, okay, now I have an extra half an hour a day or something like that. It can be a challenge for sure. And it's funny, I just ran a mastermind called Getting Your Stuff Done, and the people I worked with were all trying to do various things, some creative, some not. But what they wanted to do was make their lives orderly enough in the non-creative aspects so that they could then sort of buoy up the creative and give that creative, that inner fire, a little bit more playtime out in the outside world. Because you can have that kind of I'm a creative burning inside you, but if you don't start, then eventually you consume yourself, but you haven't created something for anyone else. So then I ask you again, are you that person? Do you keep wanting to start, but just not doing it? And then what reasons do you give yourself? Is it, I'm just not ready? Is it shiny, pretty thing syndrome? That's what my husband and I call it. Something distracts you and then you go do that instead of focusing on what you wanted to create. So focusing troubles, or just, there's no helping me. I'll never figure out how to make this happen, or I don't know what to do. Right? It could be that you have, again, a number of different streams that you're going for. So that's another potential obstacle in the way. Now, I don't think I don't know what to do is an obstacle. I think you just start with something, even if you have no idea, because you want to be a writer and you want to be a musician and you want to be a painter and you want to be a sculptor and you want to be a juggler working at the circus. I don't care. Whatever it is you want to be, maybe it's all of them. You have to pick a place to start, and then you have to pick one path for a little while. Do you have to only do that path? No, but you have to start somewhere, and you cannot let the possibility of not doing the one thing be what stops you from starting. I know Gary Vaynerchuk, who's an entrepreneur and a professional speaker and motivational person. He's written a number of books. He talks about choose one path and never look back, but it's really funny that he's the one who's saying that because he's gone from being a wine store owner to being an author to being a motivational speaker to having his own company to being a Twitter superstar and a YouTube star and all of these other things. So even he isn't not choosing. He's choosing, and he's not doing the one thing and not looking back. He does the one thing and then moves on to the next thing. And that's the key, I think, is that you have to choose the one thing you're going to do for now and begin. And then you move on from there if you decide this isn't for you. But at least you have tried the one thing. So for me, for a long time, it was photography, then it became music, and now it's writing. That's what I want to do. So because that's where I am, I'm going to use that as the rest of the sort of focus of this episode. Because I'm going to ask you to, it could be something else that you want to do, and it will be applicable, but I'm going to speak about this from the writing perspective because that's where I am. So then there's the question. Let's say, do you want to be a writer or parentheses painter or musician or I don't know, tour guide, whatever. But let's say you want to be a writer, and then you have to ask yourself, do you have a message to spread? And before you start spreading that message, you need some sort of a plan. Now, you can start screaming out into the void, which, by the way, I have done, and I'm going to be very honest here. I've spent a fair amount of time screaming into the void, just sort of saying, these are my creations, here they are, here they are, here they are, with not really a lot of focus. And there are some people who go, yeah, okay, Isolde, this is great. And there are some people who are like, you're too muddy for me. I have no idea what's going on here. And that's the thing. If you're going to create for other people, you need to know what your focus is. Because if you're just going blork, as my husband would say, out into the universe, some people might go, ooh, that's blork. That's really cool. But you want to be sure that you have some focus somewhere, because otherwise you're just blorking and you're not necessarily going to reach people with the blork. If they're not listening specifically for blork, then they're not going to hear you. It's pretty much that simple. So let's say you want to write. Let's say that's the thing. And then you have to decide these 3 questions. If you want to write, do you have a message that you want to get out there? Do you want to teach people something? Or do you have a story that you want to tell? And you need to figure out which one of those 3 it's going to be so that you can get your writing focused, right? Because it's going to inform whether or not you write fiction or nonfiction, all of that. And it's going to write, if you have a story to tell about a family member, that could be a biography. Or if you want to write your memoirs, that's still a story to tell. And if it teaches people at the same time, well, yay. But you can see how if you have a message that's a certain kind of book, if you have something you want to teach people or inform people about, that's another different kind of book. Or if you want to tell a story, that's a third different kind of book. Now, would you tell stories in a book about teaching people? Of course. In my book, Speak From Within, for example, I did that a lot. I used personal stories and case studies to write this nonfiction book about how to engage and motivate an audience. So if you want to really inspire an audience when you're doing some public speaking, or if you're going into an interview or a meeting, if you want to really get them riled up and excited, well, these are some of the ways you might do it. And when I wrote about it, I used stories to illustrate the points. But I wasn't specifically telling a whole story with the book. It wasn't a fiction book. It was a nonfiction book. So then, once you decide those answers to those 3 questions, whether or not you have a message, whether or not you want to teach people, whether or not you want to have a story to tell, then you need to decide which way you're going to write. Okay? So there are a couple of different things that I'm talking about with that. First, writers are kind of divided into 2 main groups. You can be a plotter, someone who plots everything out and figures all the steps, or you can be a pantser. And a pantser is someone who writes by the seat of their pants. If you listened to last week's episode when the wonderful J.C. Andrzejewski was on the show, who is a full-time author, she's a pantser. She doesn't plot out. She said she used to try to plot out her books, but then it just didn't work. She lets sort of the story inform her almost. It comes from her subconscious, and it shows up. And I'm going to be talking in the next few episodes, I'm going to be talking a lot more about how to let your subconscious inform what's happening in your life, because it's all about intuition, and creativity, I think, in some ways comes from intuition. And I'm going to talk about that a lot more too. So on some level, that's what JC's doing. She's letting her subconscious inform what happens in the story. That's a pantser. A plotter is someone who is going to figure out chapters and what are the points they're going to make in the chapters, what the theme is, what the subject matter is. All of that's going to be written out beforehand, and then the writing sort of files, I don't know why I said that, fills in the outline that you created when you plotted it out. Now, for me, the way I do it, if I'm writing nonfiction, I plot it out because there's almost always a message or something I want to teach in the work that I'm doing. So I will plot out and figure out exactly what I want to do and say in the nonfiction book. And in fact, if you want to grab that, I have a little document you can grab that's in the show notes, and it's all about how to start writing your book. And it gives you a sort of a template, if you will, to follow to plot out the different aspects of your either nonfiction or fiction book, but something that you can just fill in and start working from. So that's how I do it when I'm doing a nonfiction book. And that works really well. When I do a fiction book, I know that there are things that I want to end up writing about, but I don't think that I plot all that well, in that I don't plot it in advance. I was talking to a friend just the other day about this, and I was talking about the theme of my first book, my first fiction book, The Fiddler's Talisman, and it's all about whether or not you can be a successful artist and musician if you are split in one of two camps, if you will, whether or not you need to be sort of following a prescribed set of parameters, like you're a classical musician and you play the music that's written and you don't deviate. You exalt and elevate what was written last week or hundreds of years ago, but that's what you do. You play from what has been written. You don't improvise. You don't stray from what has been written. Or you can be an improviser. Traditional musicians, for example, are people probably who improvise more. They will bend notes and they will take liberties with rhythm and melody, and they really bring that and elevate the music, traditional and otherwise, to a high art. Jazz is full of improvisation, for example. So the book I wrote was all about sort of who this one musician was going to be. Was she ultimately going to be someone who followed the more prescribed path, which she had been trained for, or someone who was able to grab onto that improvisational quality of her music and see where that path took her? And it's all couched in terms of an urban fantasy novel set in New York with a sort of a whiskey swilling fairy godmother as part of the story, but ultimately it's about that theme of who are you going to be? Are you going to be essentially the rule follower, or are you going to blaze your own trail? So that's the theme of the book, and the story itself made more sense as I wrote it, because I knew the theme sort of, but not really. The theme sort of came through, and it's almost like I did the literary criticism after I wrote it and went, oh, that's the theme. That's what I was writing about. Because in the fiction world, I write more like JC. I write as a pantser. I write and just start. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm about to say, and I start, and then I will go back and edit it. And that's something, when you write, don't edit while you're trying to write. Two different parts of your brain are working there. The writing part is a different part of your brain than the editing part. And the second you start editing what you've written, you will squash down your productivity and your ability to write more, just because you're using a different part of your brain. So figure out which way you're going to write. And if you need to plot it out, grab that freebie and plot everything out. Or if you just want to start writing and see where it takes you, that's another thing to do. However, you also want to make it a habit. Now, this is important, okay? You need to decide which way you're going to achieve the actual production, the actual writing. You can do what I do, which is I give myself word goals every single day. Today I'm going to write 2,000 words. That's what I'm going to do, doggone it, no matter what. And I'm going to do that every day until I feel like I've finished this draft of what I'm writing. Some people instead go, I'm going to write for a half an hour. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write for half an hour every single day. Whichever way works for you, you need to do it, right? You need to start. But I'm going to talk to you about this, and I think it's important. Start with a word goal. Okay, you might change and be like JC and do what she does, which is she might not write for 5 days, but then she'll sit down for 24 hours and be done with 25,000 words by the time she's done. That's how she does it. Personally, for me, it doesn't work like that because I like having the structure around this is my time to create, and every day I leave a little bit of time. Now, if what works better for you is I'm not going to write for 7 days and then I'm going to spend an entire day writing, great. Just make sure that you know what it is, because I want you to make it a habit. And I would encourage you at first to start with a word goal and do it every day. And if that means that your word goal is 100 words a day, then by gum, do 100 words a day. Because if you can do it for a month, you will have 3,000 words after 30 days, right? So you will have something begun, and that's crucial to finishing is you've got to start, right? So if you've tried it for a while, maybe 2 weeks, and you feel that really isn't working, then set up a time goal and follow that. So today and every day, I'm going to do 20 minutes of writing no matter what. My suggestion is keep your document open, keep it saved, but keep it open in your, like if you're using Google Docs, keep it open in your browser so that you can sit down and do it at any time. You don't have to go through the process of finding it or opening it or any. It's just there, and it's always present for you to just come in and go, I'm going to write some. And do this, either the word goal or the time goal, for 33 days. It's going to become a habit. After you've done something for over a month, it becomes a habit, and you will make progress. And after 33 days of doing this, you will have a body of work. Something will be written, and that is amazing. Now, you have to begin. And that's sort of the most important aspect of this entire thing that I've been talking about is start today. Begin today. Begin right now. Begin whenever, whatever it is you're doing, stop. Create a new document in your word processing app and write down the first sentence. And the thing about that is don't agonize about that first sentence, because we start facing the blank page and we go, I have no idea what I'm going to write. And then we agonize about that, and then we don't start. And it doesn't have to be a perfect sentence, and that's so important. Repeat after me. It does not have to be a perfect sentence. In fact, I'm going to say it again. It does not have to be a perfect sentence. It can be as simple as, this is the first sentence of my book. There, I did it. And that's a wonderful way to start. In fact, I think it's Tom Robbins who started a novel something like, well, if it can't be done on this electric typewriter, then it simply can't be done. And that's how he started one of his best-selling books, right? That's the beginning of his book. And that's perfect because it got him started. And you know what? It's so cool. As a first sentence, it got kept in the book. So you can write anything. You can write blah, 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 blah a bunch of times on the page. Eventually, your brain is going to get tired of blah, 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 and start supplying you with cooler things to say. Our subconscious is constantly planning, plotting, thinking, growing. It's constantly observing. It's constantly learning, and it's constantly producing stuff that our conscious mind doesn't know about. So when you give it that pathway, that funnel of starting, it's going to provide you with magic. I promise you, it's going to be amazing. And the big thing is, you have to make those decisions from above, and you absolutely have to start. That's it. You have to start. Because if you don't start, you'll absolutely never finish. But if you do start, I'm betting you, you will. So, are you with me? Are you going to dedicate to this brand new and super exciting chapter of your life? Because I'm about to. I'm starting work on my next book, and it's starting this evening. I'm going to spend some time, and I'm going to write 1,000 words in my next book. By gum, it's happening. And it's the fiction one. It's the one about Ishtar's temple. So I'm doing it. And I want you to join me and do it too. And if you're going to, drop me a line, let me know. I would love to see what you are going to create. It might be writing, it might be painting, it might be I'm going to spend 30 minutes every single day drawing. Grab drawing on the right side of the brain and start learning that, or sign up for a sculpture class, or just go out and take photographs with your iPhone and do it in a way that is purposeful. And you will see that if you spend time every single day creating something, it's going to be so rewarding. Untold, personal, emotional, psychological, and perhaps even financial riches. That's how it is. If you create, you give yourself the opportunity to make magic. And I hope you do. I hope you've also enjoyed today's episode. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Mindset Podcast. I hope that you, if you are enjoying this show, will take a moment and leave a review of the show on iTunes or wherever you listen, just so that I know that that you're getting something out of this. It would be great. And if there's something that you'd like to hear about my process with this creativity thing, drop me a line. If you have questions, I would be happy to try to answer them. I'm here to make the world a more happy, more creative, more kind place. That's really, that's my passion and my goal. So I would love to hear from you and with questions or ideas or thoughts. And also, please, please, please review the show. Let me know what you think about it. Until next time, I'm here and I'm sending you all of my love. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and please tell your friends about the community we're building here. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright Isolde Trachtenberg 2019. Today's music was from Kevin MacLeod, Laser Groove, and Ave Marimba, brought to you by Creative Commons License 3.0. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, I send you all of my love.